summer at my university. And then I also worked as a part-time instructor at Bentley University, which is another school outside of Boston. And now, during my time after graduate school, I worked last year as a full-time lecturer of economics at the University of Vermont. And then I'm currently working as a tenure track assistant professor at Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania. And to kind of give you guys an idea of, the competitiveness of the job market, I applied to a bunch of jobs each of these times. And to give you guys a little bit of, a look into what it was like to work in these roles that I've had, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my work at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. So this is, working at a central bank, following an undergraduate degree. So my role at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston was as a research assistant to Dr. Michelle Barnes. She's a PhD economist working there. As for her role at the central bank, she's a research economist doing research into kind of macro finance would be her general research area. In terms of some of the work that we did while I was working under her, the primary project she was working on was taking a look at the impact of central bank policy on the insurance industry during the Great Recession, or the 2008-2009 financial crisis. Now, what did I do as someone with a bachelor's degree in economics? Well, my role was kind of more on the data side. While she was writing the paper, giving the presentations to, the higher ups, my role with an undergraduate degree was data collection, data cleaning, data manipulation, data analysis. Those are kind of my primary tasks. I was focused on the data side. In terms of what I was using for doing that data work, I was primarily doing data work in Stata. So Stata, however you want to pronounce it. That was what I was working with most. In terms of the economists that work at the Federal Reserve, Stata was pretty common. R is another program that's, increasing in popularity. Python as well. And then in terms of other tasks, I attended a number of meetings or, group meetings. I also prepared some tables and graphs for various presentations she gave. In addition to working as like a research economist, Dr. Barnes also kind of worked on the policy side, where she played a role at times in putting together materials that would, influence monetary policy. And now, of course, I work full-time as a college professor. In terms of my job responsibilities as a professor, my work is split between teaching, research, and service. So I teach a number of economics classes each semester. I do research, and then I do service to the university. This includes things like advising undergraduate students, and also like serving on different committees to, play a role in the administration of the university. So now I'm going to kind of get into the general presentation. I'm going to start by talking about job opportunities for economics graduates with a 4-year college degree. And then I'll spend some time kind of talking about graduate school in economics. Now, like I said at the start, this presentation is kind of influenced by my experience here in the US, although I'd like to think that a lot of what I talk about here applies more broadly. So in terms of the economics graduates that, the students that I have had in my classes, there are really kind of two possible career paths that I see students take after their degree in economics. Either students will get jobs that are directly related to economics, and these jobs can be in government, the private sector, or the nonprofit sector. Or students will take jobs in more of a business-related field. So not not really directly in economics, but jobs that appreciate the economic skill set. These are typically private sector jobs in fields like finance, banking, and marketing. So kind of two career paths. Now, talking a little bit about each of these possible paths. In terms of jobs in economics, there are many government jobs in economics. This is true in both the United States and abroad. In the United States, graduates with degrees in economics can get jobs working as economists or statisticians for different government agencies or quasi-government agencies. For example, you can work with an economics degree in the United States at the US Department of Labor. You could certainly also work with an economics degree at Federal Reserve banks. So those are kind of, two potential employers for economics graduates. Now, the Department of Labor is, a government organization. To work at the US Department of Labor, you typically need to be a US citizen. Federal Reserve banks are quasi-governmental. So the central bank in the US has some independence from the central government. So Federal Reserve banks will hire US citizens, but also non-citizens as well. And then outside the US, graduates can get similar jobs at similar organizations. Examples include, like the World Bank, the IMF, the European Central Bank. And certainly, each country has their government organizations that potentially hire economists. Now, taking a look at a current job posting, this is a job posting at the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the Department of Labor in the United States. The posting is for an economist or statistician. And in terms of, what we see here, this lists, it's a full-time job. It gives an estimated salary range. Here are the responsibilities that were listed in the job. And I don't expect you to read through this entire, posting here, but what we can see here, the primary responsibilities here for this job are really data collection. So working at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's an agency that collects a lot of data in the United States. Data on employment from employers primarily. So, different firms are surveyed to collect employment level data. So most of these tasks involve collecting survey data, and in some case, analyzing the survey data. And the requirements here, if you want to work as an economist, what they're looking for is a degree in economics that includes at least 21 semester hours in economics and 3 semester hours in statistics, accounting, or calculus. So you're looking for an undergraduate degree here. Or if you wanted to work on the statistics side, you need a degree that has more focus on statistics. Now, in terms of economics jobs, you can also get economics-related jobs in the private sector. Many private sector firms in the US and internationally will hire economists or research analysts, business analysts. Those are kind of typical job titles there. And these are jobs that you can get with a 4-year degree in economics, a bachelor's degree in economics. Typical companies that will hire economics graduates are private banks, consulting firms, tech companies, and so on. Some examples in the US, State Street Bank is a private bank that would hire economics graduates. The Brattle Group is a consulting firm that does economic consulting, hires economics graduates. And of course, Amazon, we all know, is a big tech company. Again, they hire plenty of economists. In taking a look at a job posting here, this is a job posting at the Brattle Group, an economic consulting firm. They're hiring for research analysts, which are either bachelor's or master's level graduates in economics. The Brattle Group has a number of offices throughout the US and abroad. So for this posting here, they are looking specifically for research analysts in their London, Rome, and Madrid offices. In terms of the description of the job, the research analyst works, on a variety of different projects. The role includes analyzing, modeling, and researching, different projects for clients. The way that consulting firms work, and I had interviewed at the Brattle Group, so I've got a little bit of familiarity with them. Consulting groups will do, work on behalf of various clients. These clients could include government agencies. So, for example, maybe Microsoft is being sued by the U.S. government for antitrust violations. The U.S. government could hire the Brattle Group to try and work on their behalf to build their economic argument against Microsoft. Alternatively, Microsoft could hire the Brattle Group to do their economic analysis to build their case against the US government. In terms of other projects, when the city of Boston was bidding for the 2020 Olympics, they wanted to host the Olympics, the Brattle Group did the economic analysis that underlied the city of Boston's bid for the Olympics. So they've got, government clients or private firm clients that are asking them to do economic analysis. Again, here's a little bit more detail on the type of assignments that are, expected. I'll highlight here, conducting statistical analysis, running regressions, estimating cost of capital. Important here, communicating with project team members. Kind of the setup of a consulting firm is that there are a bunch of, bachelor's level economics graduates that are doing a lot of the data work. And then there are master's and PhD level economists that are writing the reports and communicating with clients. So kind of a hierarchy there. And you can see here, adapting economic theory to apply to real life questions. So definitely very closely related to economics. And then a little bit of, how the recruiting process works. You have to submit a cover letter with your location preference, a CV, and transcripts. And then you can also get jobs in economics at nonprofit organizations. So sometimes, we're talking about like research think tanks here, potentially. One example is the RAND Corporation. The RAND Corporation, a research think tank that has a number of different offices. Here, this is a posting for a bachelor's level research assistant in a quantitative discipline. They've got offices, a number of different US cities. Here they give some detail. So research assistants work on a variety of education, health, science, technology, and national and homeland security projects with the team of experienced economists and so on. Research assistants provide quantitative and qualitative research support, including data collection, preparation, and analysis. But also things like computer simulation, literature reviews, and so on. And then in terms of qualifications here, we can see education. They're looking for a bachelor's degree. Economics is on the list here, although they'd consider other quantitative disciplines as well. I'm not sure why this position wants military experience, but that's not necessarily a requirement for jobs at this company. But experience with statistical packages, so SAS, SPSS, and SATA. And also computer languages, C++, Java, R, Python. And some research assistant experience. This specific job also wants skills in a second language. But again, this is just a specific posting. So to kind of summarize the qualifications that you need for an economics job, if you were to want an economics job, and this applies to the US, but also potentially abroad, the most important skills here for these very closely related economics jobs, probably most important is some familiarity with statistical programming. And that could be R, Stata, SPSS, or SAS. And it's not necessary to have familiarity with all of those programs. Generally, many of these employers would want familiarity with one of these programs. Typically, if you know one, you can learn more. Quantitative skills are important. And then knowledge of econometrics is pretty important for some of these, directly related economics jobs. Helpful but less important is familiarity with computer programming. I think more and more over time, economics graduates will be expected to have some familiarity with computer programming. This could be Python, C++, SQL, Java. And again, knowing one program could be beneficial. And then, of course, it's also important to have good soft skills. Can you work successfully in teams? And familiarity with spreadsheet software as well. Something like a Microsoft Excel could be useful. Now, some time on jobs in business with economics degrees. A lot of my students, rather than going on to get jobs in economics, will instead go on to get jobs in business. And it's probably the case that, of all the students that I've taught, it's probably 75 or 80% go on to get a job in business, maybe 20 to 25% get a job directly in economics. There are certainly many firms that look to hire graduates with training in business fields, and economics is often included in those business fields. In terms of the job titles that you could get with an economics degree in business, this includes would you mind muting yourself, please? Okay, thank you. So in terms of the jobs you could get with an economics degree in a business field, things like a financial analyst or financial planner. You might see like business analysts or marketing analysts, portfolio manager, account executive. You could certainly become an entrepreneur. Okay. In terms of companies where students from my university have gotten jobs with an economics degree, I've had students get jobs at economics positions. For example, places like the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. But then I've also had a lot of students get jobs in business at companies like MasterCard, Bank of America, RBC Wealth Management, Alta Beauty, Deloitte Consulting. So all sorts of jobs in business settings. To take a look here at a job posting, this is a job posting by MasterCard. This job is posted in the Philippines. The title here is Director of Account Management. This would generally be a job that would be for a later career applicant. But what we can see here, this is not a direct, economics related job, but rather more of a business position. We can see an overview here. So this person's going to be responsible for managing the global accounts team. That team focuses on the sale and delivery of MasterCard products. In terms of the experience that is expected here, the only educational training that's required is an undergraduate degree in a business, computer science, or engineering field. And then it's the case that this position prefers an MBA, but it's not required. In terms of general qualifications for business jobs, probably most important would be knowledge of spreadsheet software. Microsoft Excel is very popularly used in business settings in the US. Some knowledge of statistics, maybe not econometrics per se, but basic statistical knowledge, and general knowledge of business fields. And then in the business setting, soft skills are very important. You need to be able to work in a team setting. You need to be able to work as a manager or work under a manager. And probably helpful, but less important. Knowledge of econometrics could be helpful as well in a business setting. Statistical programming skills could also come in handy in a business setting, as would computer programming skills. So, similar skills are required, but the importance is different. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about education after a bachelor's degree. So first, what degrees can come after a BA or a BS in any field? Two categories here: master's degrees or doctoral and professional degrees. When it comes to master's degrees, you can get a master's of arts or a master's of science, which is the general, master's degree title in most fields. Then there are specific master's degrees in different fields. An MBA is a popular option in the US, the Master's of Business Administration. An MEd is a Master's of Education, MSW, Master's of Social Work, MPP, Master's of Public Policy, MPH, Master's of Public Health. So master's degrees. And then there are doctoral or professional degrees. Certainly there's the PhD, the Doctor of Philosophy. This would be the highest degree in economics. And then there are other doctoral degrees as well. The EDD, Doctor of Education. The MD is medical doctor, DO is Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine. The JD is your law degree. Now, what are some common degrees that economics or business students will get after graduation? Certainly you could pursue a master's degree, an MA or an MS in economics, or a related business field, maybe finance or accounting. The MBA is a popular degree for US economics graduates. The MPP or MPH are also possible options if you want to work in public policy or public health. The JD, a lot of economics graduates in the US will go on to law school and become lawyers. Certainly training in economics or business could make you a good, corporate lawyer, tax lawyer, some of those fields of law. And then certainly you could pursue a PhD in economics or a business field. So what is a master's degree? A master's degree typically requires that students spend 1 to 2 years taking advanced courses in their field of study. At the end of those 1 or 2 years, the student's awarded a master's degree, usually upon completing all coursework. Sometimes there's a thesis required as well. With a master's degree in economics, you can typically work in many of the types of career fields that you can with a bachelor's degree, but you're going to start with a higher job title and a higher starting salary. In terms of some jobs that you can get with a master's degree in economics, you can work as an economist or a consultant, a policy analyst or budget analyst, a market researcher, or maybe as a data scientist or statistician. A lot of the same job titles we saw for the bachelor's degree grads. What does a master's degree in economics look like? Here I give the required coursework for a Master's of Science in Economics at Northeastern University, which is where I did my PhD. So the degree at Northeastern requires 8 courses. Typically, students will complete these 8 courses over either 3 or 4 semesters, so a 1.5 to 2 years. Students have to complete 4 core classes and 4 elective courses. The 4 core classes are master's level classes in microeconomics, macroeconomics, math and statistics, and econometrics. And then there are a number of elective courses offered. Northeastern offers elective courses in things like game theory, health economics, development economics, labor economics, the typical fields of economics that you can study. How do you get into a master's degree program in economics? Typically, to get into a master's program, you need the following. You need to have a good GPA. And how good your GPA needs to be is going to depend on the school you're applying to. You need to have a good score on the GRE. The GRE is the standardized test that you need to take to get into many graduate programs, similar to like the SAT or ACT. You should have taken undergraduate courses in micro and macro at both the principles and intermediate level. Undergraduate math courses are probably important to get into a master's program in economics. Typically at least a couple semesters of calculus, a course in statistics, and potentially more. And then you need letters of recommendation. So these will be coming from faculty members. What's the difference between a master's degree and an MBA? So a couple of differences here. It's pretty common to go to a master's degree right after undergrad. Students, MBA students, typically work before applying to those programs. So the timeline's a little bit different. Regarding admission, MBA programs prefer that applicants take the GMAT instead of the GRE, so it's just a different standardized test. And then in terms of the classes, MBA programs, give students a core of business classes across the business disciplines. So you take a class or two in a bunch of different business fields. With a master's degree, you're going to focus on one field. So if you were to do a master's of business administration, there might be one economics course among the 8 to 12 courses you're taking. Now, my current university offers an MBA program. They offer face-to-face, hybrid, and online courses, so you could take the program fully online or in person. They've got a 1-year option or a part-time option that they call the professional option. So you could get an MBA while working. Both options require 12 classes. In terms of the academic job, you can become a professor with a PhD. You can also use a PhD in economics to get jobs at government agencies or in the private sector. With a PhD, you're going to start out a lot higher, with a lot higher salary in those jobs. Okay. And that's all I've got in this presentation here. So I'm going to turn it over to questions at this point. So any questions? And feel free to type questions into the chat or turn on your microphones and ask questions.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
And so let's say I wanted to do my MPhil in Pennsylvania, at the University of Pennsylvania, and I actually have let's say a final GPA of 3.55. That's 3.5. Let's say 3.5. Can I qualify for the MPhil in the University of Pennsylvania?
The MBA.
Please, did you get the question?
Can you? Sorry. So you were asking about. Sorry. Let me pull down the slides here. So like this program here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, a 3.5 would be good enough to get into a program like this, for sure.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, you know, in terms of admissions to US programs, and this is kind of an important point here, if you're paying for the degree, it's much easier to get admitted than if you're not paying for the degree. So it's very difficult to get into PhD programs, and that's because those programs are funded. If you're applying to master's degree programs in the US, it's usually much easier to get in because you're a paying customer to some degree. I don't know the admission statistics for the MBA program at Bloomsburg, but when I was at Northeastern, I talked about getting into the PhD program at Northeastern in economics, less than 10% acceptance rate. The master's degree program in economics at Northeastern or higher acceptance rate. So the acceptance rate was far higher. And in terms of the students that would apply to the programs at Northeastern, at least, our master's degree program in economics was probably 80% international students and maybe 20% US students. Most of our international students at Northeastern were coming from China, but there were also a number of students from other countries throughout the world. I had classmates that were from like Bangladesh, Vietnam, Taiwan, like Puerto Rico, some Central American countries. Okay, I'm seeing a question in the chat. Another question was sent, a couple of questions here in the chat sent privately. So let me first repeat the question and then encourage. So could a student with economics and geography degree get a job at a central bank? In the slides, I saw mostly economics and mathematics or statistics. Okay, so that's a good question. In terms of the jobs at like the Federal Reserve banks, and in my experience at the Federal Reserve banks, probably the most common background for students getting a full-time research assistant job at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, where I was, most common background would be an undergraduate degree, a double major in like math and economics, or math or economics and statistics. How would be useful depending on the project that someone. Let's say an economist was working more on like health economics, they might instead, have a student from a health field. If an economist was working on, say more of an economic geography related project, that could be, could make that applicant attractive. Now, when I worked as a research assistant during the summer, most of the other research assistants were economic students, but there was one student that came in at the same time as me. She was in a Master's of Public Health program. And I think her background, the economist was working on a project related to like human genetics, genetic mapping. It was kind of using some of that like, genetics data in their project. So this student's background in science made her attractive to this economics research position. So I think it's possible, but definitely Federal Reserve Bank economists want to hire RAs that have good statistical programming skills. So the mathematics skills are not even necessarily as important. If a student has familiarity with like Stata or R, or probably Stata or R, maybe even more so R now. Stata a lot of economists still use Stata. R is becoming more popular, and Python. So even if the student doesn't have a strong math background, if they've got some programming background, they could probably get a job at a Federal Reserve Bank. I'm seeing a question here. Is the master's degree in economics basically about math? So in terms of economics courses as you move up, so bachelor's level economics classes have some math, but it's limited math. As you get into master's and PhD level courses, the math gets increasingly more difficult. So that's kind of why it's important to have a math background to get into these programs. Where students tend to struggle in these classes is they don't have sufficient math training to get through the math. It's unfortunate. I think there's a little bit too much focus on math in advanced, master's and PhD level courses, but math is important. Other questions? Other questions? And again, feel free to ask questions in the chat or to turn on your microphone to ask questions. Either is fine.
Okay, I have a short question. And my question is related to the United Nations and economics. I'm looking at like for the United Nations careers available. Are there like some particular courses we can study in order to, let's say, work in the economic and social council apart from economics?
So courses outside of economics that are useful?
Yeah, like there's a part of the United Nations, that's the ECOSOC, the Economics and Social Council of the United Nations. So I'm dealing with like economics and social affairs, like for global impact. So are there other courses that, let's say, are related to economics that you can study to work in such places? So let's say studying economics in your undergraduates, then from economics you major in a different course other than economics, and it still keeps you um let's say keeps like still keeps you let's say eligible to work in such places.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of these big, kind of research organizations, government organizations, they want to see kind of statistical training as well. So beyond your economics courses, my suggestion would be, taking additional courses in maybe math or statistics. Yes, adding math and statistics would be important. You could take courses in additional social sciences depending on the position. So courses in like sociology or psychology could be beneficial. If there are like policy courses that you could take, could be useful too. Yeah, it's hard not to emphasize the quantitative training. I think quantitative training is important for a lot of these positions.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question.
Yeah.
Last two questions. These are two questions, my last two. So the first one is, can you become a lecturer in economics after MPhil in economics? That is Masters in Philosophy in Economics. Can you become a lecturer in economics after this study? And the second one is, how many years of experience or like how many years of working experiences gets you valid to become a professor in economics?
Okay. Sure. So the first question, when it comes to teaching economics, if you want to get a tenure track, like an assistant professor position in economics at a US university and any major global university, you need a PhD. You can oftentimes get a job as a lecturer, or an instructor, a non-tenure track position in, teaching economics with only a master's degree. And that's true in the US and also often abroad. Now, there are PhD economists that have lecturer positions, but with an MPhil or an MA or MS in economics, there are especially non-research universities in the US, you could teach at those universities. I know my friend from grad school who was from Bangladesh, he's got plenty of friends that teach at universities in Bangladesh, with their master's degree, their MPhil, their MA, their MS. So you can do it. When I was a graduate student, so after I completed my master's degree, but before I had achieved my PhD, I worked part-time at a university teaching economics, a lecturer position. So yes, it's definitely possible to do so. Now, in terms of the experience needed to become a professor, you can technically become a professor of economics in the United States as long as you've completed first your bachelor's degree and then your PhD. So technically 9 years after finishing high school, you could become a professor. The success in doing so is, pretty low. The job market for professor jobs in the United States is very competitive. I think I mentioned on, this slide here, I applied to 170 jobs when I first finished my degree. And applying to those 170 jobs, there were hundreds of people applying to all those jobs. So to successfully get a professor job after the PhD, it's important that you've had some teaching experience, whether that be like lecturer positions, or teaching, as an adjunct part-time, those sorts of positions. Yes, you kind of need a lot of experience. Now, I've got a couple of other questions here in the chat that I'm going to address. So first, would you recommend a student to combine economics with math or statistics? Yeah, I would recommend, if you want a job, at like a World Bank, the IMF, any major, international organization like that. If you want a job very closely related to economics, combining an economics degree with math or statistics is probably going to be helpful. If you're thinking about doing graduate school in economics, again, combining an economics degree with math or statistics is also helpful. In my educational background slide here, I was able to get into a PhD program right after finishing my bachelor's degree. If I only did a BA in economics, there is no way I would have been accepted into a PhD program right out of graduate school. This second major in math was just as important. So I think it's important. If you want to go into graduate school, training in math is important. Now, you don't need to complete a full second major in mathematics or statistics. You could take some classes. In the US, it's common to add minors to your major. So like a minor in mathematics, so 5 or 6 math classes could be helpful.
Okay.
Let's see, I've got some other questions here. So the question here, I heard about an applied math course that's really necessary in attaining a master's degree in economics. How true is it? So in terms of the important classes to get into a master's degree in economics, uh, you know, calculus, so the first couple courses in calculus are important. Maybe linear algebra is what you could be thinking of. Linear algebra is a pretty important math class too. So in terms of the important math classes for a master's degree, the first 2 semesters of calculus and statistics is probably important, and then maybe linear algebra. If you're thinking about a PhD program in economics, 2 or 3 semesters of calculus, linear algebra, a probability and statistics course, like a calculus-based probability course. And then a lot of times they want to see real analysis as a math course to get into a PhD in economics. I don't think real analysis is really that important. Probably more important for admissions than for succeeding. So another question here, is it advisable to take only economics without adding a subject like math, statistics, or French? Yeah, so with a degree in economics without adding math, statistics, or an additional field, you could still potentially get an economics-focused job after graduation. But certainly to get a job at a private firm in the business, sector, you could definitely do that without adding math or statistics. So if I look at the graduates from my institution, sorry, later slide. So like here I gave some examples of companies where students have gotten jobs. To get a job at like a Federal Reserve Bank, this position here, that student probably had a minor in math, in addition to their major in economics, if not a major in math. To get a job at like MasterCard, Bank of America, any of these other positions, probably a degree in economics alone would be enough. I don't think you necessarily need a math or statistics degree to get some of these more business-focused positions. I'm seeing another question here. Can I do a combined major with economics and philosophy? I couldn't see why not. I've known some people that have studied both economics and philosophy. Philosophy is a useful major for like logic skills and like critical thinking skills. So there could be some benefit to doing so. And I've heard, at least in the US, that some tech companies like Amazon, Google, they kind of like people with philosophy degrees. I think it's that critical thinking skills that are required in a philosophy degree that are valued by some of these big tech companies. So aside from your academic performance, is there anything you need to consider in order to gain admission, like Pennsylvania State University for a master's as an international student? So generally speaking, to get into a master's program in economics, you don't necessarily need work experience. I think just strong academic performance is probably enough. If you want to get into a master's of business administration program, the program here at Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania, you could probably get into that program without work experience. If you wanted to get into a very top MBA program in the United States, work experience is preferred. So sometime working in the private sector before going to a program like this. But yeah, I would think that you could get into the MBA program at Bloomsburg with just completing your undergraduate degree without working first. Now, in terms of getting into, business master's programs, it could be useful in addition to, your economics coursework, to at least take a couple of business classes before applying to these programs. I don't know if your university offers like an accounting degree or a finance degree, but taking financial and managerial accounting could be useful before applying to a business program. Taking like a corporate finance course or like an introduction to management, those could be useful before applying to an MBA program. So now I'm answering a question here. How does one with an economics degree get into the study of law? Now, personally, I haven't done it, but I've known a number of students that have gone on to law school after studying economics. Now, in the United States, to get into law school, there's not really a law major in undergraduate degrees. So students will typically major in some field of study. Now, like public policy or political science is probably most popular for law school, but there are plenty of people that study English or economics or psychology and then go into law school. I had a roommate one time that was an English major, and he went on to law school. So going from economics to law, to get into law schools in the US, generally you need to have a strong, undergraduate record. And then there's the LSAT, which is I think the law school aptitude test. I'm not sure what those letters stand for. It's kind of like the SAT for law school. And if you do well on that exam, in addition to doing well in undergrad, you can get into law school. Now, it might seem weird to go from economics to law, but like I was saying in the presentation, there are some areas of law that an economics degree could be beneficial. If you want to study tax law or bankruptcy law, for example, an economics background could be useful. So could a master's degree in economics get you a job at the central bank? Yes. At the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, there were two of their departments hired people with economics degrees. The research department and then the supervision and regulation department. So the research department focused on more kind of academic research. Supervision and regulation focused on supervising banks. With a master's degree in economics, in the research department at the Boston Fed, kind of at the top of the department were the PhD economists. They were the main researchers. And then those researchers all had research assistants that were bachelor's level working for them. Although in some cases, there were master's degree students that worked as research assistants. So with a master's degree, you could work as a research assistant. There were also some policy analysts. So, these workers focused on public policy issues that had master's degrees. Now, within the supervision and regulation department, they had some PhD economists. They also had some master's level economists that worked in regulation of like banks and stuff, along with undergrad research assistants. So yeah, a master's degree could get you a job at a central bank, for sure. So is acquiring another qualification or degree necessary after you have a PhD in economics in case you want to widen your qualifications for better job attainment? I would say, there are always professional development opportunities, that are useful to try and, further one's career. So right now, I'm not working on any alternative degrees or anything now. I have a PhD in economics, but since I'm at a university that's very teaching focused, Since it's a very teaching-focused university, I've been working on various teaching trainings, especially now with online teaching becoming more popular. I've done a lot of training to try and widen my teaching skills. Now, in terms of making a PhD in economics more marketable in the private sector, if I wanted to work in a private sector job, I would think about maybe potentially pursuing some coursework in like data science. A lot of people are working in machine learning and data science with economics degrees now. So some training there could be useful. And I don't know if I'd pursue another degree necessarily, but there are different certification courses in like data science or machine learning, or just even taking a few classes could be useful. Getting an MBA could also be useful in addition to the PhD for working in the private sector. Another question here. Can I become a bank manager with a master's degree in economics? I would think so. I would think with a master's degree in economics, you could certainly work at a bank in a management type role. Yeah. Okay, I've gotten to the questions here in the chat. Any additional questions?
Okay. I guess the questions are all complete.
Okay. Yeah, if there are any more questions, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hang around for a few more minutes if there are other questions, but feel free if you want to share my email address too. I'm happy to answer questions that come up after this if you've got other questions.
Yeah. I'll send the email to the page so they can get in touch with you to share their questions.
Okay. And I can send this presentation to you if you want the PowerPoint slides.
Yes, please. We'll like
Okay.
it very needful. We'll need the presentation slides so much, so we can also read through, and so that those also who were not able to join the meeting can also read through.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, so on this note, I'm very honored to say like for your the way you honored our invitation, and I'm very grateful for it, and on the behalf of my fellow group members of the KES, I would like to say a very big thank you, and I would hope to work well with that which you have told us today, everything, the details you revealed to us, and for the questions you've answered, at least some of our confusing thoughts have been cleared. So we'll work on them all, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Thank you
course.
very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Okay, so I'll be ending the meeting now, and I will be sending Mr. Richard Paulsen's email to the page. So in case of any questions you would like to add to him or to send any questions to him, we can just do that through his email. And I would also send the slides when he sends it to me to the page. So we'd have to so we also have it to read through. And for any questions that we encounter along the line, please you can just forward it through his email. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Have a nice day, guys.